Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to Hilaal Live. My name is Faraz Patel. We'd like to thank you, the viewer, for staying with us. I'd also like to thank my colleague Lukman Shadrack for taking you through that first 1 hour. Now, South Africa is facing a water challenge, with the Water Research Commission reporting that the nation needs around 140 billion rand to repair infrastructure within the bulk water supply. The Commission also noted that South Africa needs 1.4 billion rand annually from investment to maintain the supply. Now let us bring in Mr. J. Bhagwan, who is the Executive Manager for Water Use and Wastewater Management at the Commission. Mr. Bhagwan, thank you so much for joining us here on Hilaal Live.
Good evening, and good evening to your viewers as well.
Now, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here, Mr. Bhagwan. Okay, so Mr. Bhagwan, let's break it down, of course. I think everyone knows that the country is really facing a huge water challenge right now. Why these amounts, and what would need to be done in order to make sure that not only the infrastructure is done well, but consistent water distribution?
Well, I think, what we have put out through our research is awareness and an early warning, okay, that we're reaching stages, in our history where our infrastructure is becoming old. We are getting to stages where our infrastructures that we've put in, some of the bulk stuff, some of the strategic stuff, are in a window of about 50 to 100 years. Now, obviously, they age, they need to be replaced, etc. So this piece of work starts predicting what we need to put in place from now to ensure that we don't deal with bigger crises later on, that we organize and we strategize and put the right instruments in place to close this gap, that we can start investing smartly towards refurbishing, renewing, and upgrading all this infrastructure that we are quite water secure going into the future.
Mr. Bhagwan, you brought up an interesting point there, of course. I mean, a lot of this infrastructure dates back to the post-colonial, entering the apartheid time, and of course, we're now in a democratic South Africa. And as you say, many of it still has not been redone, or there's been some sort of maintenance to it. So how important is this maintenance going to be? I ask that because we've been seeing in the last few months many areas, especially in Johannesburg, where water challenges have really been quite rife.
So let me separate the issues around maintenance and around refurbishment and renewal. Okay, the issue of refurbishment and renewal is a long-term strategic intervention. I mean, it's a big investment, and we also need to recognize that the state has been the key funder for all strategic infrastructure. And if we are going to now tackle this challenge, the issue of finances, investment, etc., all become those kind of key riding questions around how we solve this problem or this opportunity or this challenge. And that is one part of it. The issue of maintenance is another big problem area. And rightly, what you have identified from the blue drop assessments, from the green drop assessments, and the no-draw assessments, we do have a problem. Okay, and the problem emerges, and manifests itself, from government's attention to close the gap that apartheid created, where a large part of our population did not have access to equitable water supply and sanitation. So a lot of investment over the last 15, 20 years has gone to respond to the economic growth in the country, to close the gap on this issues of water supply and sanitation, at the expense of ensuring that we have better operation and maintenance. So this dragon is beginning to raise its head, and we have a big challenge in our hand. But all these challenges give us this opportunity, together with the refurbishment side, to say, let's tackle this now in a much smarter way. and deal with both issues of maintenance and the replacement, in a strategic manner that builds that water security.
Mr. Bhagwan, I want to bring up the two amounts. So 140 billion rand, I'm assuming, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, is looking at it obviously from a long-term perspective. That is, of course, with regards to infrastructure. Then, of course, the 1.4 billion, that is going to be an annual investment to maintain that supply. Am I right in saying that?
So let me explain how we put it out. I mean, the 150 billion is a global figure, okay, ideally, if we could spend it tomorrow and fix everything and if we had all the money. It's a lot of money, okay? But what we're saying is that strategically and tactically, we should be spending, about 1.5 billion from now over the next 20 years, etc., to deal with this issue to get to that 150 odd billion rands. Okay, and that's kind of a more strategic approach to manage this. And if we have more money and we have more investment and more finance, we can accelerate it, according to that. But it's dealing with this big problem piece by piece, but quickly.
Mr. Bhagwan, when it comes to, of course, the funding, I mean, no one knows at this very moment how stretched the budget is of government. Looking, obviously, National Treasury would have to come into the picture. Now, National Treasury may go ahead and say, well, we don't have 140 billion rand just to repair many of the water infrastructures. So how much, and I know this is obviously recommendations from the Commission, but how much of this now would need to obviously come from outside investment or private investment to try and help, of course, maintain water consistency for years to come?
Well, like I mentioned at the beginning, that the state has played a very key and strategic role, over the last 100 years in funding and investing in the strategic infrastructure. But, this amount is a large amount, and in the current economic climate, with the kind of constraints we see and the pressure on the fiscus, we are going to now need to lean a lot on the private sector and on private financing to close this gap, both from a financing side, but also from the operation and maintenance side, because aligned to that problem that we see emerging around maintenance and refurbishment, we do also see the lack of capacity and competency in dealing with this kind of challenges.
Mr. Bhagwan, like I mentioned, of course, earlier on, we've seen, water, the challenge of water in the city of Johannesburg. We saw, obviously, the Tshwane Metro, especially in the Hammanskraal area with cholera and, of course, the challenges that community faced. I mean, water security in South Africa, I mean, what more needs to be done in order to make sure that proper security of such an important resource is really secured and done in a way which allows there to be consistent and, of course, clean water for all South Africans?
Yeah, look, we are recognized as one of the water-stressed environments in the world. And I think over the last 50 years, we had built a profile of being the world leaders in managing, this security in very adverse challenges, okay? Coming up with innovation, technology, policy that ensured that we could build a system that, responded to the kind of climatic challenges in our region. So we are having all the kind of innovation, the knowledge, the products. I think we need to fix some of the weak areas, some of the problem areas around, like I mentioned, getting the right skilling in place, getting the right governance systems in place, getting the revenue systems improved, the collection managing the water losses, etc. All these cocktail of the problems are part of the broader operation and maintenance, part of the water supply. And if we can do that together with introducing sound behavior change, that we entering the space of climate variations, etc., but sometimes we cannot predict easily, that people recognize and realize that they're part of the assurance mechanism of water supply. So the behavior also needs to start changing towards greater efficiency, towards greater accountability and understanding that water security is a collective responsibility of everyone, just not the state. And all of us should play a part in ensuring that we contribute to that water security. And together we can prosper. We've done this, like I said, over the last 50, 60 years. And I think with the technology, the innovation platforms that we have, we can solve this problem and continue to enjoy and have that prosperity.
I was about to echo that statement right over there. The state has a responsibility, but you and I and so many other South Africans as citizens also have that responsibility in preserving water. Mr. Bhagwan, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us here on Hilaal Live.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
That's Mr. J. Bhagwan, the Executive Manager for Water Use and Wastewater Management at the Water Commission. And again, the challenge of water and, of course, so much more that comes with it. And we hope that, of course, infrastructure and maintenance will be key in making sure we can have consistent water supply to all South Africans. Now, after the break, we'll be hoping to speak to Kamogelo Mabe. He's, of course, the WITS SRC acting president. We saw university students marching to Parliament in Cape Town to protest against NASFA. So many, of course, challenges that these students are facing. We're going to ask, is WITS University also going to be part of the university students that are marching to various places to make their voices heard? To stay tuned to Hilaal Live.